So I try and stay away from reading full reviews of things before I've seen the movie, because I don't want my opinion to be clouded by somebody else's. I always like to try and have as many original thoughts as I possibly can, and I find that if I do watch other reviews or I read lots of other bits about it, those things that people will say will stick out and will affect how I not only see the film but review it. But it's hard to kind of avoid certain reactions when they're as strong, should we say, as they are for Venom. Headlines such as these. It's hard to stay excited for something when you've seen people say things like that about it. Yeah, fair to say that my expectations were severely lowered when I walked into this one. I was expecting the worst, and actually this was alright.
Put the bunny back in the box.
Starring amongst others Tom Hardy, Michelle Williams, Riz Ahmed, Scott Hayes and Reed Scott. Directed by Ruben Fleischer. Off of a screenplay by Jeff Pinkner, Scott Rosenberg and Kelly Marcel. This is my review for Venom. So Venom is the story of Eddie Brock, a reporter who finds himself in a spot of bother when he loses not only his relationship but his job as well. His whole life is in ruins, and then he comes into contact with the symbiote known as Venom. From that point on, the two of them are battling to take control of one body while also trying to save the world. So yeah, the early reports from this one were not good. As bad as Catwoman, I heard. A train wreck of a movie, and I honestly don't really understand why it's getting that level of vitriol towards it, because this isn't a particularly great movie. Like, it's not one that I'm going to remember for a long time. It's not one that I'm even going to want to rewatch on that many occasions. But I've seen far worse movies this year. I've seen far worse superhero movies in the last few years. Like, if I was trying to put this in comparison with another movie, like, it's nowhere near Fantastic Four and Four Stick levels of bad. I'd say it's kind of at Thor the Dark World, sort of that sort of level, like a film that's not great, but it has some enjoyable elements about it. Certainly not a train wreck, certainly not one of the worst movies of 2018 by a long shot. And I think a large part of that comes down to the casting of Tom Hardy, because he's awesome in this movie. And it's funny that this is a movie with somebody whose body is taken over by something and they're not really in control of what's happening, when that's a very similar plot to Upgrade, which starred Logan Marshall Green, who reminded me a lot of Tom Hardy. So that comparison was in my mind quite a lot in this. But yeah, he's very, very good in this film. He's so good at being Eddie Brock, and I think he nails all facets of that character. When he's determined to do something, like, you believe in that determination. When he's completely out of his depth and he's out of his element and things are going completely haywire with Venom, like, Hardy has this look about him that just makes you fully believe that what's going on is actually happening. Like, he's going through these ridiculous situations and everything's going to hell around him, but it still is able to feel somewhat grounded to a degree because of Tom Hardy. And it's good that he's great, because the main selling point of this movie is the relationship between Eddie Brock and Venom. They're two separate entities sharing one body, and the dynamic between the two of them is one of the film's strongest aspects. I love the banter between them. I love how they sort of come round to each other over time. They start to warm to each other. And it's just all really done mostly with just the voice inside Eddie's head. There's the occasional moment where you'll see them talk to each other, yeah, but mostly this is in his mind as he's engaging with this creature that's taken control of him. And it works. It works really well. I could happily see more of the two of them just kind of sparring and just kind of bantering with each other. There's a nice relationship there, and it holds Venom together. It stops it from descending into complete dross. Yeah, entirely down to Tom Hardy, I think, because the script doesn't do him a huge amount of favours. Like, it has some funny moments in there, it has some nice moments, but a lot of it's down to Tom Hardy's delivery as both Eddie Brock and the voice of Venom as well. It's a nice dynamic between the two of them that I really could get on board with. Yeah, without question, Venom is a movie that's riddled with problems, and there's a lot of them. It's not enough to make it a bad movie, but it's certainly enough to make it an average one. For example, the first act of this really drags. It takes such a long time to get going, which is a shame, because when it finally does, when Eddie Brock and Venom become one, like, the movie steps up a gear. It has a lot of very silly things in it. It has a lot of very stupid moments, but it's a lot more enjoyable when that finally happens. But man, does it take a long time to get there. As I say, that first act just really felt like a drag. It really felt like a slow movie that was just taking pigeon steps to try and spread out time before it gets to the point. But yeah, when it gets to the point, the fun level is certainly increased, but you just got to wait quite a while to actually get there. Other than Tom Hardy, it's hard to pick anybody else who does a really great job cast-wise, because again, the script's not all that brilliant, so it doesn't give them a huge amount to work with. Michelle Williams is an actress that I've liked way back since the Dawson Creek days. Miss you, Jen. And she's fine here. Like, they seem to be trying to make the character more than just the love interest in this one, and I think to a degree that they succeed at that. They do manage to do it, but a lot of the time she does fall into those same tropes. She doesn't really break out of that mould enough, despite having a couple of moments in there that surprised me and I genuinely quite liked. One of the central problems, though, is the villain in this one, who is terrible, to be honest with you. Riz Ahmed is a good actor. There's something personable about him. I enjoyed him in Rogue One. I've enjoyed him in most of the things I've seen him in. But here he just seems so misplaced, like so miscast as the main villain for this film. His villain is very one-note. There's nothing really to him. There's no depth to the character whatsoever. He's just a bland, generic villain. And as such, that makes the whole story kind of hard to invest in. Things escalate a lot quicker than they probably should. Like, it feels like we just jump from one point and go flying across to another one without kind of naturally going there. And when we get to the final fight in this one, it is so difficult to tell who's fighting at which time. Like, you can't tell who's Venom, who's the villain. Like, it's very, very difficult to see because it's all so darkly lit, and the both of them look pretty much identical. There's just a slight colour tint to be able to tell who's who. But yeah, a lot of the time it's just a bit of a mess in that final sequence. So yeah, this certainly isn't terrible. Certainly not as terrible as people have been saying, but it's hard to say it's particularly good as well. It just kind of sits in the middle as an average movie, something that could have been a lot better, but still at the same time could have been worse. I just don't know what this means for Sony's Spideyverse going forward. I imagine it's still going to take some money in, at least for the opening weekend, but I don't know how it's going to perform on the long term and whether we could have another Mummy situation here. Another franchise of movies set up off of one that just kind of fails to take light. And something I didn't expect as well was a DC reference in this. Kryptonite gets mentioned. That really took me by surprise in a movie that has a Stan Lee cameo in it. I did not see that coming, although we did kind of get a Stan Lee moment in Teen Titans Go, so maybe these two universes are starting to get along a little bit. Perhaps that dream of a DC Marvel comic book team-up movie could be closer to happening. It's never going to happen. I'm going to give Venom a 5 out of 10. So, yeah, a low score for Venom, but it's a 5 out of 10 that I did enjoy quite a lot of. As I say, it's not a disaster, it's not a horrible movie, it's just one that screams of missed potential. It needed a better script, a stronger story, a much better developed villain. But then on the flip side of that, you have Tom Hardy in this, who's doing a really, really good job. But as I say, he holds this movie up and he makes it as watchable as it is. And as a quick aside as well, I'm not hugely up on Venom as a character. Like, I haven't really read the Venom comics. I know enough to know that his backstory has been changed considerably in this, which could annoy some Venom fans. But for me, yeah, I don't have that attachment to the character of Venom, so I was fine with it. But I'm interested if you are a Venom fan in the comics and you've seen this movie. Let me know what you think about that change in the comments. And let me know what you think about the movie Venom as well. Let me know what you think about this overall thing. Hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more. You can also follow me on Twitter at JoeJulians. Let's talk there. Let's talk in the comments. Let's just talk. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.